So what's interesting is, though, and you just said 1914 trench, and then we're going to have a 1917 trench later, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is that that's an example of water attrition. Nothing's moving really at all.
Mm-hmm.
So what have you got here? What have you done to realise that this is a trench, and what are you learning from this? What's your read of all this, and how did you, what's happening?
Well, we saw a portion of the trench down at that stretch down at the back there.
Yep.
But this part of the trench, we at first didn't realize that the trench was here because it was on the edge of that pond.
Right.
We couldn't really see the difference in color and structure between the filling of that pond and the trench. But once we started excavating that one, we started to follow the trench, and that we saw that there was actually a trench next to the pond. So they used the edge of the pond as a base to dig in. As you can see, ground is going down here as well, so
Yeah.
perfect position to have a lookout over the valley down there. Position enough guns here. It's difficult to pass that valley without having many casualties, so that's why they dug in here. So on the left side here you see how they made a negative of the trench, so they emptied out all the backfilling. So this is how deep the trench was.
Which is not very deep.
No, it's a really shallow trench, but of course you need to think we took away about 30 centimeters.
Okay.
You have to add, and then all the ground has been dug out. If you put that on the sides, as you can see here, you already have quite a decent cover. Yeah.
Yeah.
But still, it's very shallow. There's no reinforcements, there's no revetments, there's no floorboards, there's nothing. So it's just a ditch.
Yeah.
Some locations the ditch was deeper, the trench, and others it was more shallow. We can see that on the aerial photographs as well, but we can see it here too. Most likely it is, you have to see it as different slit trenches or foxholes that they afterwards connected with each other. So everybody was digging in deep enough for themselves, and then they had to connect it. And the connections didn't have to be that deep, it just had to be enough cover to go from one slit trench to the other.
Yeah.
So that's why. And they also, sometimes it just reacted on the type of soil. As you can see down in the back there, there's a lot of pebbles and stones, which is very hard to dig into.
Yeah.
And it just didn't go that deep because it was too hard. Well, here is sandy, loamy, easier to dig, so they went deeper. So this is the emptying, the negative of the trench, and then down there you can see a cross section of that trench, so that you can really see the difference in color between the natural soil, which is that greenish color here, and then the backfilling of the trench itself. So you can see that they tried to flatten out the bottom, and then they had some kind of there's a more steep wall down here and a more.
Yeah. Is that why you kept it like that, to see the backfill itself? Why did you have to keep the cross section tight?
Yeah, well, we always do both, because cross sections, that's what we start with. They tell us how deep the trenches go, if there's wood or not. But they're very local, whereas if you empty out the trenches in a negative, you can find a lot more evidence on how they made the construction. So this is like a first phase, like to scope, see how the trenches are built, and then the next phase we empty them out to get more info on if they use floorboards, revetments or not. If there are finds in it, we can still open them up in the location that we found them. Like for example on that stretch here, so from here on and around the corner, so on this position and down here, we found a lot of German equipment, 1914 equipment, and we found spike helmets, belts, ammo pouches, rifles, bayonets, water bottles, everything
just
was
left.
Yeah. So or they left it, or what's more likely is that it was from casualties, that they took the bodies away, but they left all the gear in here. And on this location here, you can see that the trench is widening a bit.
Yeah.
And there's some rust marks down there. So this is the location of an explosion. So here a shell hit the trench directly. And we found a soldier that was killed by that explosion. So he was still here. So we found bits and pieces of him here.
Oh my gosh.
And the rest of his body on the other side of it. So the explosion kind of ripped him into pieces. Yeah.
And how could you tell it was an explosion? Just through the metallic?
Yeah, we find a lot of shell fragments from the explosion itself. So from the body of the shell after the explosion, all those bits and pieces are in the wall of this trench. Well, this is the main